And we are live. Munro, can you hear me?
Hi, how you going?
I am wonderful. So you're all the way in
Good.
Sydney?
I'm all the way in Sydney. I'm not locked down, but I feel like I am.
Fair enough. Well, I hope for the next half an hour to 45 minutes you feel free to share your story. And I'd like to welcome everyone back to Pride in the Living Room, Jewmos edition. So
Yep.
for those who are just arriving, Pride in the Living Room was founded by the Israeli LGBT taskforce Agudah in memory of the 2009 Tel Aviv Gay Center shooting and the Jerusalem Pride Parade stabbing in 2015. And Agudah founded this project to offer a voice and a stage to LGBT Jews from around the world. And it is my pleasure to welcome Munro to the stage. The floor is yours.
Well, the virtual stage, we're here. Yeah, Jared. Yeah, interesting experience, I suppose. Probably going back to, I am 53. Probably going back to when I was 24 was probably my first experience in coming out. Where I went on holiday and I met another Jewish guy on the beach and we started talking. I wasn't really out at the time. I didn't know what I was at the time, to be honest with you. And became friends with this guy. And one thing led to another, and we had an experience, which wasn't very much in those days, but it did kind of freak me out. I obviously at the time I was brought up in South Africa at the time. It was a very conservative society, not like today. And I then made a decision from there actually not to deny my sexuality, and literally went for a year with, as I said, I didn't go for man, woman, or beast for that matter, and just ignored, put the sexuality aside, and tried to push that out of my life as if it wasn't a part of my life. And that went on, and I think I started obviously, starting to get understanding, but it wasn't as open. I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't know what to do. And so just pushed that side of my life to the side. And I suppose, yep, if you don't acknowledge things and deal with them, they're going to come out later. It's like putting your finger in a hole where there's water coming out. If you take it out, the water's going to come out again. Yeah, and the next experience was really when I was 27, 3 years later, where I had actually met another Jewish guy in South Africa. And we'd met on a newspaper advert, used to be called Cupid, just to meet people. It was mainly straight people. And the first time I'd ever seen anybody saying, Jewish guy looking to meet another Jewish guy as a friend, and whatever comes from there. And I contacted this guy, and nothing actually happened, but he really became my best friend at the time. And we were literally like brothers, and he helped me a lot. He had already been out. We had similar backgrounds, similar family experiences. And interestingly, our parents actually knew each other, but we didn't actually know each other. And we were best friends, and he helped me in many, many ways, and made me feel that it was okay. And his family were accepting of him, and I used to go to their house for Shabbat and have experiences with his family and just felt inclusive, and I didn't have to hide away. And I couldn't come out to my family. I just wasn't comfortable with it at the time. And then actually through him, actually met my first partner, who I was involved with for 2 years. We lived together, but everybody thought we were friends. We actually rented an apartment together, 2-bedroom apartment, and we made it look like, we were housemates living together. And we were involved for 2 years together. Then I decided to move to Australia from South Africa. This is back in 1999. And I'd been many times to Australia, really enjoyed coming here, enjoyed the freedom. Australia was a lot more free a society and more an accepting society, especially Sydney. at the time, came to live in Sydney, and yeah, it was a really good experience. I just felt I never had baggage. I could be who I am. I didn't have to pretend to be anybody. And literally from my first job interview I went to in Sydney, you know, I told them I was gay. They didn't ask me, but I told them because I wanted to be totally open about things. And my boss's wife's brother was gay as well. So we just connected really, really well. And it was really a great experience. And I was now in a work environment and a living environment that I actually felt free and safe in. And then met my partner in Sydney, and we were together for close to 15 years, on and off a bit. And his family were very open and very accepting and accepted me into their family. And it was just a totally different experience where I could be who I was. And I think that was really the life-changing, you know, when you asked me about life-changing events, they all had their own little experiences, but this was the thing that then propelled me into the next 20 years of my life, where I am today. And it's part of my life. It's not an issue, where before I might have felt it was, you know, I was a special needs person. I had special needs, or, you know, didn't have a foot or a hand or something like that. I was a full person, a full body, and a full human being. Met the Jewish gay group in Sydney, which was really interesting, which had just been formed back in 1999, Dayenu, and met some really, really nice people at the time through there. And it was just a very inclusive society, and really enjoyed doing Shabbats and having events and functions, which I'd never seen before, gay Jewish functions. And was introduced to the Emmanuel Synagogue, which was open, accepted gay people. I mean, this I'd never seen or believed could even exist before. So it was really, everything was who I was, what I was, and it was just part of everything. My life was the way I wanted it to be. And it was, call it normal, if there is such a word as normal in inverted commas, which allowed me then to get on with my life and not have this this thing I was carrying around with me, that I didn't know how to deal with.
Thank you, Munro, for sharing your story. I just have to start by saying you are the youngest looking 53-year-old I've ever seen. It could be the
Good.
car lighting, I'm not exactly sure.
It's healthy eating and healthy living.
I have a few questions, if that's okay.
Yep, sure.
Oh my goodness, I wrote so many things down. I really think what stands out to me in your story is what you said close to the end, which is after everything you've been through, you can now say you are a full person, a full body, a full human being. And I think those words are incredibly powerful because there are so many LGBT Jews out there who don't feel like a whole person. Maybe they feel like two half humans, which are sort of in battle with each other. Maybe they feel like they are only half a person. And I think it's really inspiring to hear that you're able to proudly say those words. So thank you so much for sharing.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
You've gone a little bit quieter.
Yep.
Is
Can
there a
you hear
way
me?
for you to be louder? Yes.
Yep.
Um, so I wanted to ask, you spoke a little bit about there was a period in your life where you denied your sexuality, where you sort of pushed away that part of you and you didn't engage with it at all, with men, with women, otherwise. I know that that's something that a lot of LGBT people struggle with when they are discovering themselves, discovering how they fit into the world. The choice that they make is just to repress any kind of sexuality.
Yep.
So if there is someone who is watching this who is going through that that struggle of repressing their sexuality, what would you say to them?
Look, it's Jared. It's a very different time, and you know, I feel that people can be who they are today. It was interesting today because I was with a work colleague, had a meeting, And obviously being very open about things. And his wife came, we went out for lunch, and his 18-year-old daughter arrived. And she actually asked me a question. She said to me, did you ever have a problem coming out, and how did you deal with it? And I said, I explained to her my situation, and I said, you're 18, you're at the final school year. Do you have kids in your class that are gay and are they openly gay, and how do they deal with it, and how do they accept it? And she said, oh yeah, quite a few of my friends actually, boys and girls, are gay. And she said, we don't even see it as an issue. We don't even talk about it, she said. It's like, I know they're gay, so what? Let's get on with it. Which is very different. And I think people are a lot more accepting from my experience, and from what I can see from friends that have gay children, and, you know, people that are probably more around your age group in their 20s and 30s. And I have gay friends as well that, you know, are in their 30s and 40s and have gay partners of 20. And it's so lovely to see that these people are so open and so full, and they're living these lives, and there's nothing to be scared of. There is a community. You've got a support structure today, and we're there, we're in this together. That's the bottom line. We're all here for each other. And there's no reason not to come out, because the longer you suppress it, it's going to affect your health, and it's going to affect your mind as well, and mentally and physically. It's not worth doing that to yourself.
What was it like for you?
It was tough. It was definitely difficult. I couldn't be who I was. I was living two lives and pretending to be somebody that I wasn't, which was fine on the outside. And I put up a very good show, and, you know, nobody picked anything up. But on the inside, I think it did affect me. It affected the way I related to men, the way I, you know, if anybody even looked at me in a way, you know, that in an admiration way, or tried to pick me up or anything like that in that day, I would have just ignored them and walked away. And it was interesting because I knew some gay people, and I wouldn't associate with them, because by associating with them, I would be seen as gay. And that was just too risky at that time.
Can you talk a little bit about the context that you grew up in South Africa? So, what sort of Jewish um, environment were you living in at the time, and
Yep.
what was the societal thoughts on homosexuality?
I came from I wouldn't say a religious Jewish family. I came from a traditional Jewish family. South Africa had a very large Jewish community of about 200,000 people at the time. It was a very influential community, very successful community. But it was, you know, people were conservative. If you weren't the norm as considered in those days, and anything different from, you know, left or right from the center line, wasn't acceptable. Um, you know, if I came out to my friends, my biggest worry was that I'd lose all my friends, or I'd be ostracized. And yeah, that probably would have happened, because a lot of them, you know, by associating with gay people, other people may think they're gay. And, you know, very similar to my experience with other people that I knew were gay, and I wouldn't associate with them, because by association, I was implicated, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And the society, I mean, the Jewish society in South Africa, I could never have gone to my rabbi and told him I was gay, because he was, you know, I'd heard stories, and he was homophobic. And, you know, in those days, if you were gay, you had a disease or something, and they probably put you on lithium or shock treatment or something like that. You know, we heard those terrible stories, and we see them today even, you know, the kind of things that are still being done to gay people around the world.
All these years later, do you know if the community you grew up in has changed?
Yes, definitely changed there. It's changed. I mean, when I came out to my parents, my mother couldn't look at me for a number of months, but then eventually accepted it. It was interesting because she came from an artistic background and had gay friends, but just couldn't deal with it. My father, who I thought was quite homophobic, dealt with it very well. And my mother went hysterical. My father turned around and said to me, all I want is you to be happy. And actually quite an interesting story. This was more when South Africa was opening up more, you know, people were, pornography and that type of stuff wasn't around, and you couldn't even get books on gay people or anything like that. And a friend of mine worked in a bookstore, and one day he called me and said, you know, your father was here today looking for books on how to deal with gay children. And I mean, I wasn't a child. I was close to 30 at the time. But it's interesting that he went there and tried to investigate things. And as homophobic as I thought he was, he actually was trying to deal with it a lot more than my mother, who was crying and carrying on about it.
How did that make you feel?
Amazing. Really good. That he'd taken an interest and, you know, he wanted to know more. Maybe he felt he couldn't ask me, and I don't know what I would have answered anyway, but it was great to see him go out and try and, you know, understand my situation and where I was so he could relate to me better.
Hmm. You mentioned that your first experience was when you were 24.
Yeah.
And how it was sort of a mixed experience. It wasn't fully pleasurable. It was a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Can we take a step back? And I just wanted to ask, do you remember when you first started to realize you were different, even if you didn't have the words to describe at the time?
Yeah, I'd probably say maybe 13 or 14 years old.
Hmm. And at the time, was there any, I mean, did you know what the term gay meant or homosexual
No,
or?
no, I didn't know. I had a feeling that I was attracted to men. Well, I don't think it was attracted, but there was something different the way I saw a man as I saw a woman. So there was something, and I'll tell you another very interesting thing that actually just come to me now, that, you know, in my first grade at school, I was friendly with two other guys. And obviously, subsequently, you know, after primary school, we went to high school, university, we all drifted and our lives went in different directions after primary school. And I bumped into them many years later, the two of them who were still friends, and all three of us were gay.
Wow.
How funny. And we were all 7 years old when we were friends at school.
Mm. It often happens like this where people, where LGBT people feel like they're the only person in the universe who can possibly understand what it feels like. And they have to repress it, they have to not associate, like you were saying. And so all three of you probably had similar experiences of wanting to repress, wanting to dissociate. And it could have taken one conversation, one very brave conversation to maybe change things.
But at 7
Um,
years old, we never knew that. We never knew any of this. I mean, it was 20 years later that we bumped into each other and we all started talking, and it was, you are, no, you are, oh, we all are, what?
snap. um, so you spoke about renting out an apartment with your partner at the time when you
Yeah,
were in your late 20s. And to the world, you were two friends sharing an apartment, but you were actually in a relationship. And this is such a common story that I've heard when speaking with people on this subject. Um, what led you to making that decision? What was the sort of the logic in your brain for choosing that?
okay, well, it was an interesting situation because he was actually married before to a woman and had a child. Um, he had actually converted to Judaism. He wasn't born Jewish. Married this girl who was his childhood friend. They had a child, And then when the child was 4 years old, I mean, he was in his mid to late 20s. He had a child very young, decided he's coming out, and he left her. And he actually needed somewhere to live. And I had a place, and I said, well, why don't you come and live with me? And we said, well, how are we going to do this if people start asking questions? So it was just, we were sharing a place, and it was actually quite interesting because I used to go to my parents for Shabbat. And one day I took him with me as a friend. And my parents really liked him. He was a Jewish boy. He was divorced. He had a child. He had no family. He had nothing. And my mother actually welcomed him in, not knowing that he was my partner as a friend. But when she discovered the story, she never wanted to see him again and wouldn't allow him in the house.
These are, I think when people are put in challenging situations, then they will be creative with solutions.
Correct.
I had a conversation with one person who he was dating a guy who was from a very religious family, and he pitched an idea of the two of them moving into a share house with a lesbian couple, and then pretending that they were two straight couples, but actually, living their lives. And it might sound odd, it might sound strange, but if you're living that life, if you're in that headspace, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you adapt to create a reality, that works for you on one side, but you are still living a fake life. You're not living a real life, but you do what you need to do to survive.
So then you moved to Australia, and uh, you were out at your workplace. You were out to your partner's family. You were able to find Diano, and that has been a source of connection and community. And so, looking more to today, I wanted to ask you, Munro, these days, after everything, what does Judaism mean to you?
Judaism is important to me. I'm not religious, but I'm traditional. And, I never wanted to be in a situation that I had to decide between my sexuality and my religion. And it was so welcoming to be able to have a community where I could be who I am and also be Jewish. And interestingly, Jared, that the original founders of Dayenu were all South African guys and girls.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Yep. I think there was one Australian. I mean, you should speak to Kim Malcolm. Malcolm might be able to tell you. Malcolm and can't remember who they were. There were a few people there, but it's interesting that we were all South African Jews. That had started this, and it's interesting. And then the Australian Jews came in to it, but there wasn't anything here that they had actually started.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you as well. So at Diana, with the events that you're able to take part in, and the Pride Shabbats and Emmanuel Synagogue, um, these places help you to feel one whole person, like you were saying. And there have been times in your life where you didn't feel like a whole person. And
Correct.
I wanted to ask, in those moments when you were having an internal conversation, or when you were facing the world and there were some disagreements, what gave you strength in those moments?
When I was in Australia,
Throughout your journey?
what gave me strength was that sexuality and being gay was, from my point of view, was such a small component of my life. There were so many other parts of my life. And somebody actually once said to me, draw a pie chart and see what part of this life, what part of your world is this. And it was a small component, and I think I'd convinced myself that, because it is actually your whole, it's part of everything you do and everything, the way you react and the way you see things. But I had to compartmentalize that at the time to be able to cope and believe myself that it was a component and not part of my life, which was probably the wrong way to do it, but it was my coping mechanism at the time.
And these days?
These days, I don't even think about it. It's part of my life. I have gay friends, I have straight friends, I have lesbian friends, I have transsexual friends, I have drag queen friends, I have everybody. And I don't label people. I don't think of people like that. They are the people. I don't think I'm going out with my gay friends or my straight friends. It's just, we don't think like that anymore. That's not part of our lives. Everybody's integrated. And if anybody, any of my friends, my gay friends or my straight friends or my gay friends have problems with each other, I don't have that situation. Everybody gets on.
Are you out as Jewish in...
Sorry, just 1 minute. It's the audio is gone.
We're back. So I wanted to ask, are you out as Jewish in the gay circles that you inhabit?
Absolutely. Everybody knows that I'm Jewish. I had an Iranian boyfriend for a while. He knew I was Jewish, and actually one of the first things I said to him is, you're Muslim, I'm Jewish, have you got a problem with that? And he said no.
If you are dating someone non-Jewish, have you thought about how you want to or not want to add Judaism into the relationship?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would still do the things I do. I wouldn't enforce anybody else to do to be involved. I'd love them to be involved in my life and my community. But haven't really gone down that route. I mean, most of my partners have been Jewish, and one that hasn't, the Iranian one, was quite happy to be part of the Jewish community and used to come with me to synagogue. And I think he even came to me for one Mardi Gras Shabbat at the Emmanuel.
Sounds
and
really
didn't have
nice.
an issue. It wasn't an issue to him. He wasn't religious. He was Muslim, but not radical, or didn't really, he's just Muslim by birth, didn't practice, and was very happy to come with me to the synagogue and go out with my Jewish friends, and never had an issue with it.
I have one or two more questions, if that's okay.
Yep.
So you're currently living in Sydney, and you grew up in South Africa. Yep. You've had an experience of the Jewish life and the LGBT gay life. At least you've experienced a piece of them in both places. With that larger perspective, what's one thing that the Sydney Jewish community could do more to reach out to the LGBT Jewish population?
Jared, I think they do a lot already. They do a huge amount. When I was originally part with the early days of Dayenu, the first gay Mardi Gras march, the Jewish gay group, I mean, I wouldn't be part of it at that time because I just wasn't comfortable then to be doing that. And interestingly, the last Mardi Gras in February was the very first time I've marched, and I marched with my straight nephew, and we had the most amazing time. So I think there's a lot being done, and people like highly influential people like Vic Aladef and people like that that actually stood up for the community and stood up against the Jewish board and the authorities that were totally anti it, changed the world to, I mean, people like Vic and people like him just made the most amazing change for our community. And I don't have an issue telling anybody I'm gay or Jewish in Sydney. And I see the support we get from Dayenu and from Emmanuel Synagogue, and I know Jackie and the rabbis and everybody there. And they're amazing, absolutely amazing. Jackie was marching next to me with her daughter. And they're just so inviting and so warm and so lovely. We are a million centuries in 25 years. We've moved.
Is there anything that South Africa, the community you grew up in, could do better, do you think?
Well, I don't know because I haven't been there for a very long time, but South Africa was one of the first countries in the world that legalized gay marriage as part of the constitution. You know, gay rights were accepted. And I don't know because I haven't been there for a long time, but I don't believe there are any issues there from the friends I talk to that are still living there. Most of them have left.
We're about
I mean, I've been in Israel. I was in Gay Pride in Israel last year. I absolutely loved it. It was an amazing experience. And I just wanted to feel what it was like in Israel. And it was fantastic. One of the best experiences.
I think that your words will reach out to many people. You know, there are lots of people who have had different life experiences, and hearing your journey, hearing your story, and seeing it have such a beautiful conclusion, a conclusion for now. I think that has an immense power to it. So thank you again for being here with us at Pride in the Living Room.
I've got 3 final words to say, if I can, to anybody that's doubting.
Yeah.
Just do it. There is support. There are people out there for you. And there's no reason for you to suffer on your own.
Beautifully said.
Thanks, Jared.
Munro, thank you again. Here's to sharing our story in this moment and many more moments in the future.
Stay safe and be well.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Bye.